Okay, so let's talk about vinyl or vinyl. Is
Yes.
that how they say in Vienna?
Germanic
no.
is more like vinyl.
Vinyl.
Vinyl. It's a very kind of, very lovely way.
Did you speak German?
Yeah, I had to. I didn't learn it at school, so I miss a lot, but I get by. So yeah.
How long have you been there?
I've been visiting for the last 7 years, and I was more recently there in the last 3 years because of these film projects.
But you never actually moved there.
No, I did. I mean, it's funny. Initially, I didn't. Initially, it was just visiting. It was completely random, and then it's a very seductive place. It's really seductive, and you get drawn into it, and the story came. One day, I just thought, this is the story I have to make. So I don't know.
And what about this story? I mean, why Vienna is such a seductive place, and it's a city full of many things. Why music? What
Well, I think initially it was kind of cheesy. The sort of like music connects people, and it's the wordless language, and I think, like with anything, if you start to go into it a bit more deeply, then hopefully you find more deep questions. So then music became more about sound and space, and in a way what constitutes how a space can affect sound, and the sound can affect the space. So it's a dialogue, as somebody says in the film, actually. But there's a dialogue between the two.
And you decided to go into music and the scene in Vienna, electronic, and all kinds of new and old, because it's all played within those two ideas, the vinyl and the new scene in a way. What made you decide to direct it? Because you are a producer also, and you don't always direct projects. What was the reason for you directing this?
Well, I mean,
apart from doing everything else.
Yeah,
almost.
filming. I think filmmaking is interesting. I mean, it's very easy in a way, because today you have this term filmmaker. So back when things were more expensive, and with film things were much more striated. You have your different areas, and now you can have a small HD camera, and you can do your own thing. Let's put it that way. So and you have distribution through the internet, so you can become a producer and a filmmaker really overnight. Then it's just a question of having a story. So my choice to direct and produce and film, and now finishing with the editing and all this sort of thing, licensing, with documentaries you have to license material, music rights, all of that was partly, in a way, because you become so close to your subject, and especially this film, it became more of an art film. So in that way, it's more of an artistic statement. It's not a collection of found footage. It's really trying to create something, and so in that sense, you become more of an auteur.
Yeah, that's what struck me most about the film, because it's like a vision. It's like you transferred into vision. Like on one side, it looks like a huge remix. Like an electronic music remix, because, you've done all the work with, saturation of colors, and then fast forward, and then flashbacks, and then, everything is there, image-wise, and it's like the idea that it gave me was, okay, he's doing like an electronic piece here of music with images on the one side, and on the other side, art, like all little bits and pieces put together, as you just said. Was that something that you had in mind, in the back of your mind, and it just sprang out while you were filming, or or how does it happen? I mean, people gave you ideas about it? And
I mean, that's a good question, absolutely. I think what happened was I had to approach the project not as a documentary filmmaker, because musicians are naturally suspicious. You know, documentary journalism has a bad name, and especially in Vienna, authenticity and being cool are very important. They're not into kind of, you know, this sort of histrionic, you know, kind of, hey, let's make a deal kind of thing, you know. And so if you come in that way, so I had to approach it as an artist. I had to walk in and say, look, I'm one of you. I've been, you know, I've had my problems with, you know, producers and the system, as it were, and I'm creating something that will, and I actually promised them. That's why I use a lot of time lapses and things, is because I promised them that I would match the images to their music. And so I actually worked very closely with them. So for instance, if they saw a clip and they were like, oh, you know, I'm not happy in a way because, you know, but that happened maybe 1% of the time, then I would say, okay, well, let me see what I can do. And I would then think about it, and then I would understand their point. So it wasn't me imposing my vision on them, because the music is their music. So I was constantly aware of, I'm not Viennese, and so I have to represent Vienna in the best way possible, in the most authentic way possible. And the second was that it's their music, and I'm lucky that they're giving it to me to use to make a movie. So I think a lot of documentaries sometimes look at their subject as it's almost exploitation. And you know, you run away and you make money from it in a career, but you've left your subject behind. And so for me, it was really important that we work together. We're all in this together, and yeah, that was important for me.
so you did have a feedback from all of them
Yes.
about the finished film.
Yeah, they love it.
And
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, in fact, actually, no, sorry, they haven't seen the final version. Because we haven't made a premiere. So in fact, you've just seen the final version here in Trieste. So this is the pre-distribution version, because obviously, you know, distributors might say cut this or cut that, and you have to work with a distribution process. But at this moment in time, so this is the version that we will premiere in Vienna. So.
Talking about distribution, it's really interesting, because I think you have to have a strategy in a way. I mean, when you're taking films all over the world, especially to festivals, because I imagine that, you know, not all festivals are alike, and you know, somewhere is more business-like than other places.
True.
And what's the balance? I mean, in what percentage you choose a festival for its pitching, you know,
well, I mean, I think,
the artistic or personal, you know, I mean...
I think, well, the thing is, I mean, the film industry does work in terms, I mean, the thing, you know, we're humans, everybody's a human, and we react in very human ways, and often it's easier when somebody says, oh, that's good, then the other person goes, oh, is that really good? Okay, yeah, then, you know, and to get noticed is very hard. I mean, the equipment means that more people can make movies, but it doesn't mean that, you know, so the job of the festivals is getting harder and harder, because they've got more and more, you know, stuff coming at them, and they have to wade through this. So it helps when you have people to help from the inside who say, by the way, you should look at that, because that's really good. So it's really a hearsay, like a film, even a film once it's in the cinema, it rises or falls based on hearsay. So you get chosen, but if you know how to work the system, then obviously you've got more control. And often some producers have been such veterans that they can move around, talk to people, and so it depends. And this is my first solo project, so at this point it's wherever the wind blows, you know. I'm lucky, but I will say this: I'm not into it necessarily. It really depends. If you really make something to be a product to sell, and you see it as a stepping stone in your career, then you should have a really serious plan. But I'm making this as an artist, and yes, I would love to make money from it, but in a way that destroys the purpose. So
that's
yeah, it sucks,
that makes sense.
You
Yes.
know,
But you started your career actually, I mean, from doing, what was it I read that was interesting, stop motion animation and things like that, and
that's funny,
shorts and,
yeah.
you know, and how did it all come to this, you know?
I mean, I think, again, it's funny because I actually talked to somebody today about whether they should go to film school or not, and I did go to film school. I chose, you know, at that time, I did make a choice. So Tisch School of the Arts in New York was supposed to be one of the best schools at the time, so I thought, great. You know, film is about doing. It's like anything else. The more you do, hopefully, you know, you learn through your mistakes, and you eventually get to where you're going. And you have to have a story to tell, obviously. And I think that for me, I started out really going the wrong direction. So after film school, which was quite expensive, I then had to work. I worked for some film studios. And I wasn't making movies, you know, which isn't, you know, I was in the movie industry, but I wasn't actually making movies. And so it really was about taking risk, and you have to take a risk in your life. And once you jump, then, you know, I was lucky, I guess, in a way that I knew what, having worked in the industry for so long, and having worked for companies, I knew what not to do to some extent. So I did know that, let's put it that way. And I did learn technique at NYU that was very useful at Tisch. But in terms of really having a story, I mean, if you don't have a story, you forget it. You know, it's better to wait until you have a story and then worry about learning to become a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Going back to Vienna and vinyl and stories, as it happens, this morning during the press conference you said something really interesting about Vienna and maybe Europe at large, or let's say the Eastern and Central European countries in particular, having this identity where they tend to reflect upon themselves and their story rather than go following trend after trend without, and that was said in the documentary as well, as far as music goes.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But there's something that I can't quite catch there. I mean, starting from that scene where the punk bloke, you know, goes all obnoxious, and then there's that consideration afterwards,
yes.
and somebody says, I don't remember the artist who says this, but they say, you know, it's not necessary to shout always, to you know,
yeah.
to be that loud.
Yeah.
I mean, we just want to hear the silence now and again.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how that is? I mean, I can understand that, and it makes sense. But on the other hand, don't you think it leads to some sort of I don't find the word now. Immobilization.
Yeah. No, I understand
stillness
what you're saying.
of not action.
Yeah.
Talking about things that are happening around.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, I'm English, but I'm a very multi-culti mix, and so part of my mix is Native American, and part of it is also Cajun and Creole from Louisiana. So I'm half Irish, English, and I went to an English public school. But so my identity on some level is that. But my identity also is shaped by other things, and if people in America had not taken to the streets, I wouldn't have the chance to make a movie today. So I wouldn't have the vote. It would still be acceptable for me to sit in the back of the bus or to drink at a different water fountain. So I think that obviously you have to shout at some point, and you know, and today we have a big problem because there are many people who believe it's okay to blow themselves up in order to make a point. And that's the extremes of this expression of frustration and anger, you could say, on some level. On the very other end is somebody like Ono saying, well, you know, I think it's important to be introspective, to look inside yourself.